Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mind Your Mission, a podcast where we help Christian women stay on track towards what God says is good in His Word. Today, I am 40 weeks pregnant. Today is my due date, the day that we're filming this. And so we figured, since Liz and I are both, Liz is a little over 37 now.
I'll be 38 in a couple days.
Yeah, so we're both in a very tangible waiting season, and it's different than some waiting seasons because we know this one is gonna end. We know that in a couple weeks, we'll be on the other side of it. However, it does feel very much like we are just waiting. And so we figured we talk about waiting seasons and how they are best fought through faith on the Lord. And we are going to relate it to where we're at in this pregnancy, but then also just hopefully it can be relatable to other seasons of life, whether you are waiting to feel a sense of purpose for what you want to do when you graduate high school, whether you're waiting for a relationship that'll lead to marriage, whether you're waiting to conceive a baby, whether you're pregnant like we are and waiting for that baby. There's everyone, I feel like, in some shape or form is in a waiting season, which that concept in general, I feel like I'll talk about more in depth in a little bit. But whether you're younger, older, we're all waiting for the Lord to come back. We're all waiting for something. And so we thought we'd talk about it today and relate it to where we're at in life and in pregnancy. And one thing I'll just kind of dive into to start is that this pregnancy for me has been a little bit different. We've talked about it before, and if you've listened to my birth story or watched any of my recent YouTube videos, then I would have mentioned this, but I feel like I've been a lot more diligent this pregnancy with maintaining a healthy lifestyle, being active. I feel like I'm much more informed this pregnancy on how our bodies are designed and how they will thrive. Just doing all the natural things, drinking raspberry leaf tea and eating dates and exercising, curb walking. This pregnancy, I've been doing all of that. And last pregnancy, I wasn't. And so last pregnancy, when I hit 40 weeks, because I went over my due date last time too, it's kind of precedent for me. It was a different feeling because I hadn't done all the things, quote unquote, all the things. And so there was stress associated because of that, because I felt like, oh, shoot, I should have done some of these things sooner. This time around, I have done some of those things, but it's not necessarily sunshine and roses because I did all those things. Instead, the feeling is flipped a little bit like I did all those things. Why am I not going into labor yet? And so, which I feel like is a feeling that's very applicable to waiting seasons. I think of the dating one and the marriage one specifically. Like if you are someone who is in your early or later 20s and you feel like you've done all the things right, quote unquote, but you just haven't found the right guy yet, it can be really discouraging and really tempting to think a certain way about God, whether that's like, okay, God, I've done all the right things, like why aren't you coming through for me? Or to think about yourself in certain ways, like in my example now, I've done all the right things, like what's wrong with my body, you know? So it's really easy to get in that mindset and to forget about the sovereignty of the Lord and to doubt God's goodness through seasons of waiting. And it's so funny too for me because, again, I'm 40 weeks. I know all the data. Like my brain knows all the things that, so like your due date is just an estimate, and that people can go into labor 37 weeks, 38 weeks, 42 weeks. Like it's just an estimate. And my brain knows that that's okay. And that, again, I have the precedent of going late in my first pregnancy. And so I know my body just based on experience is going to go a little bit later. And so there's no reason to stress, but it's just crazy how even though I've prepared my brain and told my brain and learned all the research and everything, how the stress and the doubt can seep in. And so it's just been really eye-opening the last couple of days to some of the things that I've been idolizing when it comes to what I'm trying to control and things that I think are in my power that are really not, and the control that I thought I had is really just an illusion. Like we're never in control. And so, yeah, I feel like it's been insightful just to see where my mind and my spirit have been the last couple of days. And I am almost excited to continue along this pregnancy and just to test out where my trust in God is and to force myself to be forced to go back to God's truth and rely on that. Like I feel like it's good when we face tangible things that make us do that. So Anyway, Liz, I'll kind of turn it over to you to give an update on where you're at and where your mind and heart have been. But yeah, it's just crazy how I can be all talk about, trusting the Lord's timing and trusting my body and knowing that it's just a due date and not like that doesn't really mean anything. Like, it can be all talk, but
Mhm.
then when the time comes, it's easy to be tempted to doubt and to have fear and to question things that you know to be true.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not as close to my due date as you, so I haven't had all those feelings of stress yet because I'm like, I could use a little bit more time. I like one night this week, I think I freaked my husband out. I knew I wasn't going into labor, but I was having like really bad back pain and just some cramping. I probably just overdid it or like my body's gearing up, but who knows how long it could be. And he was like, he didn't sleep all night and then was like, texted me in the morning, was like, I figured out where to go in the hospital. I'm feeling like he like thought I was maybe going into labor. I knew I wasn't. Like I was like, I think I wasn't having contractions or anything, but it's just interesting being in the unknown of like you could start labor at any point. Like I know if I get closer past my due date, I will definitely be more of in the impatient spot wanting to control everything. But for right now, I'm okay with waiting a little bit. But I feel like the anticipation or the waiting for me is more so like labor. Like sometimes I don't have fear about it, and then some days I do, and I'm like, oh, I have to like go into labor and like push this baby out. And I feel like the waiting for that has kind of been stressful, I guess, or just like worrying about the unknown because I haven't been in labor before. I don't know. I don't know what a contraction feels like. I don't know what pushing a baby out feels like. So I feel like that is more so where my worry has come in. And I know most first time moms go over their due date. So that's like what I'm kind of expecting. But I just really need to work on living surrendered if like anything should come up, like it might not go according to plan, and living surrendered in birth too with the pains and all that stuff. But I am not in a super stressed place yet. But this whole time I feel like has been a waiting season. All pregnancy is a waiting season. And like you said, you're always in a waiting season. I feel like my whole life I've been in a waiting season. Like in high school it was like the waiting season for college, and in college it was the waiting season for life after college, and then it was the waiting season to get married and engagement and all that, and then it was the waiting season to have kids. And so you're just always in a waiting season, and I can be an impatient person sometimes. So just working on surrendering it all to the Lord and putting it in his hands.
And I feel like surrender is the key and the theme. Sometimes I feel like the purpose of motherhood. Motherhood forces surrender. I mean, life forces surrender. Let's be real, because it's so easy to feel like we're in control when things go according to plan. And I think waiting exposes the truth that we never were in control. And when life slows down a little bit, it's like a loving reminder from the Lord that we were never the ones holding things together, that he was and still is. And in Proverbs 16:9, it says, "The heart of man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps." And so, it, even though I think that we should be diligent in our planning and doing everything that we can to be good stewards of the time and the resources that God's given us, really, like, the Lord is the one who establishes our steps, like it says in this verse, and he really brings things to fruition and is the one who's dictating the timing of all of it. I Releasing that control is what actually brings peace. Yeah, it's life is cool because it forces you to reflect, and even things that aren't necessarily like trials. Like, I know that there's so many Christians out there facing so much more hardship and persecution than we are, but I am thankful that God uses everyday life challenges to bring us closer to him and to glorify himself. And because that's really the point of it all, is we want to bring glory to the Lord, and through realizing that we're not in control, it does that.
Yeah, and going back to me being anxious about labor, I feel like God really met me with that this week. We did John 16, this women's Bible study that I do, and we read through that. And Jesus is talking to his disciples in here in this. I've heard this verse before, but I haven't read it in the context of scripture. But this is where Jesus tells his disciples that you will grieve. He's talking about him leaving. You will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy. A woman giving birth to a child has pain because her time has come, but when her baby is born, she forgets the anguish because of her joy that a child is born into the world. So with you, now is your time of grief, but I will see you again, and you will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy. And I just love the idea that Jesus is using labor here to describe the waiting to his disciples that they were about to experience and the pain and the anticipation and the joy that would eventually follow after his resurrection. And when I was reading this, I also kind of compared it to Jesus' waiting for the cross. Like he knew he was about to endure something so painful and excruciating, but he did it because the outcome was salvation for his people. And this is just something I was reflecting on, like going into labor. I want to remember that when I am in the trenches and in the pain. Like I was going back to the Garden of Gethsemane, which is the night before Jesus went to die on the cross. And as you read through it in the Gospels, you can just see that this was a moment of really deep, painful waiting for Jesus because he knew what was ahead. He knew he was going to be betrayed. He knew the suffering. He knew the cross. And he definitely felt the full weight of it. In Matthew 26, it says that he was overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. And he prayed, Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. And this is just waiting in its most surrendered form. I can't think of anything more surrendered than Jesus in this moment. And he didn't rush it. He didn't run from it. He waited and prepared and he submitted to the Father's timing and plan. And I think this teaches us that waiting isn't a weakness, it's obedience to God. And like we talked about, surrendering to his plan, because Jesus could have escaped the pain. But he chose to wait through it, knowing that new life and our salvation would be born. And so that's something I was just reflecting on this verse that he told the disciples in his waiting, and he knows soon that he's going to go through the same type of pain, and the pain that Jesus was going through was purposeful, and that's exactly what labor is. I think we talked about that in another episode, that labor is painful, but it's purposeful, and every contraction, every ache, it's doing something important, and it's getting you closer to meeting your baby, even when you can't see it or you don't exactly know what's going on. And I think that's how it is in our spiritual lives too, because in the waiting, God is working. And even when nothing seems to be happening, if you're in a season of infertility or wanting to be married, God is working, even if you can't see it. And what he might be working on might be different than what you're praying for and asking for, but he might be working on new strength in you or new faith in you and new surrender in you. And it kind of brings me back to how the disciples may have been feeling after the crucifixion. Like they were obviously confused and they were grieving and they were wondering if everything had fallen apart, but God was still writing the story. So if you're in a waiting season, I want to encourage you that God is also still writing your story, because the grief for the disciples was real, but it was temporary. And just like Jesus said in John 16, it turned into joy that no one could take away. And so I was just encouraged through all of this week, specifically about labor, but I feel like you can apply it to anything. And then earlier too, in John 16, verse 12, Jesus tells them, I still have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. And that kind of hit me when we were reading it in the Bible study, because sometimes the waiting is actually God's mercy, because he knows we're not ready yet. Like he knew the disciples weren't ready yet to understand the things he was going to tell them or be able to process them. And in the same way that my body has to prepare for birth, God has to prepare our hearts for the next season, which is what he could be doing in you right now. And waiting is sort of his way of saying, I'm not withholding from you, I'm preparing for you. Like in this way, Erin's been waiting longer than I. Like he's preparing your body for it, and you don't want to rush something if it's not ready. That's something I have to like remind myself. Like I don't want to rush labor because my body's not ready. It's going to be a more painful experience. Like I would rather not, have Pitocin and all that. Like I want my body to be ready for labor. And it's kind of the same thing. You don't want to rush the waiting seasons because God is doing a work in you and you want that work to be accomplished. And if you rush through it, you're not going to get the full benefits or the full experience that the Lord wants from you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think waiting seasons, whether it's waiting for something that you know is gonna be hard, like labor, or waiting for something that you know is gonna be good, like marriage, I think in a sense, regardless of what you're waiting for, that can feel like a place of or form of suffering, and it's really tempting to ask, "Why God?" And you said confused at some point, you said that word, and that's a word that I very closely associate to the waiting season, like, you can definitely find yourself being confused. Like, why, God? Why am I waiting? Why is this going to be hard? Why aren't you bringing something that isn't hard? Like, it's easy to ask the why question. And I felt when our pastor was preaching this Sunday, we've been going through the book of Exodus, and this week we were talking about the last plague when God kills the firstborn of all the Egyptians. And like looking at this, it's really gruesome and like kind of confusing, like I just mentioned, because it's like, why, God? Like, why did you have to, like, why'd you have to do that in order to free the Israelites? And he just talked about the concept of asking why, God. And from it, he brought up a verse that says that my wonders may be multiplied, meaning God's wonders may be multiplied. Like, why is God doing this? Why is he killing the firstborn? And really, the answer is so that his people's faith would be built upon him. And God, in this case, knew that the only way to do that, the only way that Pharaoh was going to let his people go, is if he brought that last plague on them. And this really forced everybody and us listening to say, Lord, you are God, I am not. Help me accept the things that I don't understand, which then glorifies the Lord. Like if they weren't in that place, then if they weren't in that place, then his wonders wouldn't have been multiplied so greatly. And so I just was really thinking about how here, like, God is using this to free his people, to redeem his people, but it seemed really confusing at the time. And one thing that I thought was cool that the pastor touched on was so the Israelites here, they've been in slavery for 400 years, right? So that's a waiting season in and of itself, those 400 years. But when after this last plague, when it was time for the people to go, scripture says that they leave quickly, in full, and instantly. And so after 400 years, when God says go, it's time to go. And so that's like another thing about waiting seasons is that it's not just a time to sit around and twiddle our thumbs. Like we have to be ready, and we won't always know what that means, being ready. Really, we have to think that the Lord is not slow in fulfilling his promises. That's just our perspective. Like our concept of time is so different than the Lord's concept of time. Like, yeah, 400 years to us sounds like eternity. Like that's longer than a lifetime, but to the Lord, that might not be that long. And so we have to make no mistake, the day of the Lord is coming soon. It's coming fast. Like that's the ultimate waiting for Jesus' return. And so ultimately, we have to always remember who God is, what he's done, and be ready for what he's going to call us to, because it could be instantly in our perspective or it could be instantly in God's perspective, which might not be till the end of our lives. I have been reading Weston's like storybook Bible, and we just read the first stories like over and over and over, but we always talk about baby Isaac and how God was faithful to Abraham. But Abraham, like he was so old when he had Isaac, but God promised that he would have descendants as numerous as the stars, and he had to trust. Like, and but then God calls him to sacrifice Isaac, and he has to be obedient. So if Abraham didn't have a clear view of God's sovereignty, that would have been such a confusing situation. And I'm sure it was, even though he did trust God. So, like, ultimately, we just have to really dwell on God's goodness and his sovereignty. And another story that we've been reading is the story of Joseph, just how he was betrayed by his brothers, enslaved in prison, and he spent years in waiting. But one thing I think that's cool about Joseph's story is he never let bitterness take root. It would have been so easy for him to just sit and blame his brothers and to focus on the sin of another person, on the sin of his brothers. But instead, he trusts that God is in control. In Genesis 50:20, it says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Joseph knows this whole entire time that God is in control. And because Joseph knows that, it glorifies God so much more when in our perspective, he could have rightfully been blaming his brothers the whole time that he's waiting, but instead he took every opportunity. Like in prison, he became the best inmate. Like he became the best and took advantage of every opportunity because he trusted that God had him there for a reason. And that's what we need to do when we're in seasons of waiting, whether it's waiting for something good to come out of our season, or if it's like waiting for something that we know is going to be hard. We have to take every opportunity to glorify the Lord. And even when we can't see what God is doing, he's still writing redemption into the story, just like he did with Joseph.
I feel like it's convicting when you're talking about, like, Joseph and taking advantage of the waiting because I could think back to, like, any waiting season I've ever had, and I'm like, "Oh, I could have probably stewarded that better," like, specifically thinking about, like, being single and wishing, like, that was a time where the Lord, like, wanted me all to himself, and I should have spent more time developing my relationship with him. I mean, did have a relationship with him, but I'm like, I always could do more. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like, I kind of wish I would have focused more on him in that season because now being married, like, you don't have as much one-on-one time, like, with the Lord, or also thinking about that in the context of having kids, like, my quiet time probably won't look the same for a while, so I really wanna take advantage of it in this season, even if I haven't been the best thus far, but that's, like, an important reminder because I think Joseph took advantage of his waiting seasons, like, it was hard, but he made the most of it, so that was convicting with you talking about that. So I just wanna encourage anyone listening, whatever season you're in, to take advantage of it because God has you there for a reason, and leaning into him in the tough times will bring you closer to him, which is important because you wanna develop the relationship with him in the good times so that when you have it during the bad times, which is something I need to remember for labor. Like, I want to be walking into that to the hospital, like, walking so closely with God. And because I know I'll need to rely on his strength to get through it. I can do it on my own strength.
Yeah, well, and that's why I think too it's important to always reflect on the ultimate waiting for Jesus's return because like when we're 60 someday and we've had the kids, we've had the grandkids, like we've had the careers, we've done all the things, like what are we then waiting for? Like I'm sure there'll be little things that we feel like we're waiting for. But as far as like those big ticket checkbox life items, it's like, well, like okay, in old age, I can imagine it could be discouraging because you're like, okay, like I'm waiting for something, I'm waiting for a sense of purpose. What you're waiting for is Jesus or to be with him. And so even when what we're waiting for does come, there's still greater waiting ahead. And I think every fulfilled prayer here on earth is just a small glimpse of the ultimate fulfillment that we're waiting for when Jesus returns. Like always going to feel a sense of dissatisfaction because this is not our home. So that's why it's important to reflect on that and how we can maximize our relationship with God here on earth. Like you're kind of saying, like there are things that we can do to take advantage of the waiting and of the time. Like we can always go out and make disciples, like we talked about in our discipleship episode. Like there are always people who don't know the good news that we can share with in any season of waiting that we're in. There's always more prayer, more time in the Word, more worship. Like there's always more that we could be doing in any season to get closer to the Lord. And that's, I think, what we have to focus on because that's going to be key to the eternal waiting that's always present.
One other waiting season that I'm thinking of too right now that I know we both feel is having to go back to, you know what I'm gonna say?
Yeah.
I was just thinking about it as you were talking about having to go back to work for like that year or 6 months if we do skill bridge when we go back. So I'm like, I'm not looking forward to that. Like I'm already enjoying being home. I can get so much more done. Like around the house, like I have so much more energy. I can like actually cook dinner. Like it's all the things I've wanted to do, but I work like takes it all out of me. But just being able to like be able to support my husband more has been such a blessing. And then introducing kids into it as well. I'm like, wow, that year is going to be hard, especially because my husband will probably be gone for most of it. So I'm just like, really makes me nervous, but I know in that season, like the Lord is going to do such a work in me, like in the hard seasons. Yeah, that's definitely a waiting season. Like I'm like, and I know there'll be something else we're waiting for, but once we're done working, like everything, I don't want to have like necessarily that mindset, like everything will be great. But that's something I'm thinking about and nervous about because obviously it's not ideal for me. Like, I don't wanna send my kid to daycare. I don't wanna have to do both. I don't wanna have to also not have my husband around and have to figure out, like, house things and also taking care of, like, a kid all by myself, not having any family in the area. Anyways, that's just my worries. So but it's gonna be fine. We're gonna get through that waiting season, but I'm very excited for it to be over.
Mhm. Mhm.
'Cause I'm like, even if my husband is gone when I'm not working, I can at least have more time to get stuff done, like, around the house, but being, like, 2 people and at once and having yeah, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. It'll be hard. And
Mhm.
I had a mentor yesterday. We were talking about these similar concepts, and he said that in seasons of hardship, whether it be waiting or something else, in a sense, it helps when you ask the question, like, what can I get out of this? Not necessarily like a selfish, what can I get out of this? But how is God going to change me through this? Like, what lessons can I get out of this? Because there's going to be things in that year when you're working and Matt's gone and you have your baby. There's going to be things that you're going to learn through that that you wouldn't have learned otherwise if you were staying home. And of course, we talk on this podcast all the time how that's not ideal, and we want to align our lives with what is going to help us flourish, that, like God says in His Word. But through the unideal, God shows up, and it just makes me really recognize God's sovereignty. There's so many verses in the Bible, whether it's in Job or Joseph's story, like I was talking about, or one of my favorite Psalms recently has been Psalm 107, where it talks about God's sovereignty in the sense that He brings both the trials and the deliverance from the trials. Like, I'm going to read Psalm 107. This is starting in verse 23. It says, "Some went down to the sea in ships doing business on the great waters. They saw the deeds of the Lord, His wondrous works in the deep. For He commanded and raised the stormy wind, which lifted up the waves of the sea. They mounted up to heaven, they went down to the depths. Their courage melted away in their evil plight. They reeled and staggered like drunken men and were at their wits' end. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and He delivered them from their distress. He made the storm be still, and the waves of the sea were hushed. Then they were glad that the waters were quiet, and He brought them to their desired haven." So, and then of course it goes on to talk about the steadfast love of the Lord, which is repeated over and over in Psalm 107. The steadfast love of the Lord, that's both when He raised the stormy wind and lifted up the waves of the sea, but also when He delivered them from their distress. So if it's steadfast, it's continuous, it's happening all the time. So it's confusing in our human brains to think that steadfast love is represented in Him bringing the storm and delivering them from the storm. But that's exactly the paradox of God, is that He's in control of all of it and that He uses all of it to glorify Himself. And so when we go through hard things, waiting seasons in particular, it's really easy to view the waiting as like just because we live in a sinful world or just because of other people's faults or our decisions that we wish we wouldn't have made. Like, it's easy to blame other things. But I think that so much clarity is brought when we just give credit where credit is due and accept that it could be from God, that the hard stuff, like, it's really easy when non-believers ask the question, like, why do bad things happen to good people? It's really easy to kind of say, well, God doesn't cause bad things to happen, but He allows them. Like, that's a common answer that you hear. But I feel like sometimes that answer can be more confusing than it could be bringing clarity. Like, I think it brings more clarity to just say, God God is in control, can cause the storm and the winds for a purpose. We might not understand it for years to come, but He is in control then just as much as He's in control when He brings the deliverance. And just to say it how it is and just to, like, tell people the truth that God is sovereign and in control, I think brings more clarity and will result in more people trusting Him and having a deeper faith more than just a surface level faith when the good things do come about. So anyway, I love that song because it just puts the blame on God for both. And also like this song because it relates directly to labor, because when friends who haven't been through labor ask me what a contraction is like, I describe it like a wave where, like, it comes in, it starts slow, but then gets raised really high and is really rough, but then it goes away. And so I love this psalm too because we can, in labor, view those contractions, those surges, those waves, whatever you want to call them, as coming from God. They are purposeful. We know that in our brains throughout labor that those waves are going to be stilled and that they're going to bring deliverance, ultimately bringing us to our safe haven. But they're hard, and if we lean into them and let them happen, they'll change us in a good way. If we fight them and fear them, then they'll bring pain and suffering. So I just love this song because it's like applicable to the waiting, but also applicable to labor and applicable to just life in general. And when we allow and trust and surrender, there's a lot less pain. There's a lot less hardship, just like there will be if we surrender in labor. So, key of this episode, surrender.
I need to read that psalm before I go into labor. When you were talking about it, I was just reminded that in the storm and in the deliverance, like the Lord is with us no matter what. And we have his presence with us. So even if things are hard, you have the Lord with you, and let those hardships like draw you closer to the Lord, because that's like what I'm really going to try to lean into in the next season when I get there, is just like, this is hard, but my relationship with the Lord is going to come out stronger because of it. And so just remembering that the Lord's presence is always with you in the good times and the hard times is something I was reminded as you were like reading and talking about that psalm. And the Lord is with us in labor in the hard times and when we have the baby in the good times. So it's a good metaphor for a lot of things. And it's cool that God designed childbirth to include us in this way. And I think having like a gratitude mindset like that too is a mindset I want to have going into labor, because like, I'm just so grateful that he chose women to bear children and partner with him in like creation. Like, it's such a cool concept, and I think he's designed us for it. So that's something that was just reminded of as you were talking about all that.
Yeah. The gratitude is key too because there's always gonna be things in life that we can complain about, and that's so applicable to any waiting season too, like, sure, you might not have a boyfriend or a husband or kids yet or whatever it may be, you might not have the job that you've been waiting for, you might not have clarity, you might be confused, but what do you have? You probably have a lot, especially if you live in America. You probably have a lot more than than you realize, and you always have the Lord. Even if you don't have any tangible things, he's always with you and he will always provide for you. I was telling friends this the other day. I know that I'll reflect on saying this in the middle of labor, but I'm excited for the pain and I'm excited for the labor of labor
Yes.
because it puts me in a place where I have to surrender. And that's just doesn't happen very often in my daily life, but it'll remind me that God is with me. He's in control. And even though I try to pretend like I have control all the time, I don't.
That reminds me of like working out. Like, I miss that feeling. I used to enjoy the pain. Like, I just thought it changed me as a person and it brought me to a place that nowhere else could take me. So I am kind of excited for labor in that sense, to like go back
Yeah.
to that place of like only like labor or a really hard workout also, but labor is harder than that, but can take me to a place of this sort of pain that kind of changes who you are in a way. It makes other things, I haven't gone through labor, but like in general, like it makes other things in life seem easier when you can accomplish those really hard things. So
Yeah, for
I
sure.
don't know if that makes sense at all. I'm also thinking of the waiting season with the government shutdown. It hasn't really affected us because we've been getting paid, but I know like a lot of civilians aren't getting paid. So this could also apply to that. And I'm praying about it. I'm hoping it ends soon because that's like two or three two paychecks missed, which adds up. It's a hard time, especially like around the holidays. I'm grateful that we're getting paid, but I know like a lot of TSA agents and air
Yeah.
traffic controllers and a lot of government employees are not. My thoughts and prayers go out to you if you're listening
Mhm.
to this.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you brought that up. And when it comes to working out, it's funny on the way we went to the store earlier and on the way home we were listening to Forrest Frank, which Weston loves these days, but I was listening and like getting really excited about running, which is
Mm.
not something I typically would say. But like I think since we ran before, like early in our pregnancy, like I was missing that feeling and excited to get back to it. Because I remember last time after Weston was born, I when I worked out, it's not necessarily that my body felt stronger after giving birth, like, your body definitely needs a little bit of time to recover, but my mental fortitude, like, I'm like, working out is way easier when you know that you can do it, and, like, in contrast to labor, like, you know you only have, like, however many sets left or however many reps, like, working out is so much more fun when you, like, have the mental fortitude, and definitely grew that, and so, yeah, it's cool to be excited about how this challenge of labor is going to change us, and it makes you a lot more thankful for it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get back into running too. That's like what I'm looking forward to post labor. Obviously, the recovery time, like January 1st, I will
Yeah.
be getting back in my running again because I honestly haven't been able to work out to my like full
Mhm.
abilities over a year because
Yeah, your
I
hips.
Yeah, I realized I tore my labrum in October of last year, and then I kind of had to stop running, and then I had surgery in January, and then I immediately got pregnant, so I never really got to, like you can't really get to that same place of pain when you're pregnant. I do my, like, hiking on the treadmill, and it's just my heart rate does kinda get up there, but I can't go up too much, but, yeah, I'm excited to get back to that place in labor and then post-recovery.
So I hope for any of you out there who feel like you're in a waiting season, like we talked about, that could be a lot of us, any of us. I hope that you can remember that the Lord is not slow in fulfilling his promise. That's only our perspective, and that these times when we feel a sense of suffering or confusion or are tempted to ask why God, it's an opportunity for us to see him show up in areas that we might not have noticed before. And it's an opportunity to rely on his strength and not our own, and practice fully surrendering, which is something that we should all do every day, because the control that we think we have is just an illusion. So lean into the moments when it's revealed as an illusion, and that you can, and just remember that God loves you. He's in control, and you are his child, and he cares deeply about you. And we care deeply about you. So thank you all for listening. Like I mentioned, I'm 40 weeks today, so who knows if we'll be on next week or not. I'm guessing we will be. Like, that's what's funny, is that everybody, my midwives, my friends, they're all like, "Oh, you don't look uncomfortable enough yet." I'm like, "Okay, thanks."
You need more time to cook in there. Meanwhile, I'll, like, see people in the store, they're like, "Oh, how much longer you got?" And I'm like, "I don't know.
Yeah,
You're about to pop." And I'm like, "Okay."
thank you. Like, what
And I
is that a
am. So, like,
compliment?
I am about to pop.
Right, exactly, but
So
anyway, people are it's kinda nice having gone late before, because at least I have the precedent, like, they're not as worried. Like, my mom, for example, was like, "Oh, you were late before," like, nobody's
yeah,
as stressed, or nobody's expecting me to have a baby on my due date.
no. I was not.
I'd love to. I'd love if she came tonight. That'd be great. I doubt it's gonna happen, but we'll
Maybe.
see. I
I'm
would
hoping
love
to have
it.
our babies on the same day. I think that would be funny.
No, I think I should just start praying that specifically. Be like, "Well, Lord, if I have to go late, let Liz go early, because I would love to just be in labor at the same time." That'd be just a crazy story. I would actually be pretty blown away if that happened. Like, it'd be pretty darn cool, but
I know. I thought this whole time I was like, "I'm gonna go late, so it's gonna happen." But then I've been having pretty consistent cramping this whole week, so I'm like, "Well,
you
I don't
never
know."
know.
You never know. But
You never know.
it could also be another month. So I'm like, "I'm not ready. Give me more time." I need, like, a week and a half. I don't need that. It's fine. But I would like to make it to, like, 39 weeks at least.
Well, we never know.
Yep.
Just like when Jesus comes back, labor will come like a thief in the night. Like,
Yep. I know.
we don't know. But we'll keep y'all posted if we're on next week. Then I definitely haven't had my baby, but don't worry, God's got a plan,
Mhm.
and we're trusting it. So thank you all for watching. This has been Erin and Liz, helping you mind your mission.